Just to look in your eyes again, just to lay in your arms. How's that?
Keep going.
Just to be the first one, always there for you. Just to live in your laughter, just to sing in your heart, just to live in your laughter, just to sing in your heart, just to be every one of your dreams come true. Just to sit by your window, just to touch in the night, just to offer a prayer each day for you. We okay? Good. Thank you.
Welcome all. We're going to be on a slight delay today, probably about 15 minutes. We're waiting on Rod's son Justin to arrive, and his plane was delayed in Miami. So he's frantically trying to get here. So I just appreciate your patience. And this is a good time for some quiet meditation, some deep breathing, and we'll get started just as soon as he shows up. Thank you.
living lives. Love bursts in and suddenly all our wisdom disappears. Love makes fools of everyone. All the rules we made were broken. Yes, love changes everything. Live or perish in its flame. Love will never, never let you be the same. Love will never, never let you be the same. And love changed everything.
Please be seated. Let us join together in the litany from Ecclesiastes 3, printed in your bulletin. This is a call and response. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to plant and a time to harvest what is planted.
A time to laugh and a time to weep.
A time to dance and a time to mourn.
A time to speak and a time to keep silence.
A time to embrace and a time to let go.
A time to keep and a time to make peace with what cannot be.
For everything has been made suitable for its season.
Rod was a fan of John Denver. I met Rod through Rotary, and we were also buddies playing golf together. I think John Denver wrote the perfect song to honor Rod and Betty's memory here today. So Betty and the family, friends, and fellow Rotarians, for you. Just to look in your hands again, just to lay in your arms, just to be the first one, always there for you, just to live in your laughter, just to sing in your heart, just to be every one of your dreams come true, just to sit by your window, just to touch in the night, just to know a prayer each day for you, just to long for your kisses, just to dream of your sighs, just to know that I'd give my life to you. Just to wait just a reason for giving, just to say I adore, just to know that you're here in my heart to stay. For you, all the rest of my life, for you, all the best of your life, for you alone, only for you. Just the words of a love song, just the beats of my heart, just the pledge of my life, my love to you.
Let us join our hearts together in prayer. Spirit of life, you hold all the mystery of our living and our dying. And we release Rod's life and spirit to you now, with gratitude in our hearts for a life well lived. We are grateful for your steadfast love for him all the days of his earthly life. We thank you for all that he was to those who loved him, and for the ways his living and loving touched those around him. We thank you that for Rod all sickness and sorrow are ended, that death itself is past, and his spirit now dwells where all your beloved gather in peace. For his family, those who have been his dearest companions over his lifetime, we ask your sustaining presence and constant support. Be their refuge and strength as they mourn the loss of one filled with such simplicity and grace. For his children and family who each relished their relationships with him and cherished his life, may your tender touch remind each of his care. For friends who have gathered to honor the memory of one who blessed so many, may our gratitude draw us closer so that we too might live out our callings. Generous Spirit of all mercies and comfort, hold us gently in your love so that we might grow and deepen in the ways that we cherish life. Bind our hearts and spirits as one and lead us into the light of the new day you have prepared for us. In the name of your gracious Spirit, amen. If Randy could come forward.
It's my honor to be here to speak and represent our Eugene Southtown Rotary Club, which was made so much better for having Rod as a member for so many years. And I knew Rod mainly through the Fellowship of Rotary. That was, I'll consider it a gift. One of the many gifts of being part of Rotary was having had the chance to get to know Rod through projects and meetings. And Rod, I'm wearing a duck shirt today because of our mutually avid support of the University of Oregon Ducks, which we talked about quite a lot. I know I'm assuming this is very true for the rest of you, as the more I got to know Rod, the more I got to understand and appreciate his friendly demeanor and just his plain kindness. You couldn't but come away as a better person for having known Rod. He just rubbed off on you in that way. In Yiddish, in the Yiddish language, there's a word, perhaps some of you have heard the word mensch. How many of you have heard the word mensch? Okay, quite a few of you. The simplest definition is it's a person of integrity and honor. And in many ways, that sums up in a short way who Rod was. He was a person of integrity and honor. And speaking from the framework of a Rotarian, he was a very great Rotarian. Many of you are familiar with this, and if not, it's on the back of your program, this 4-way test. And Rod is an example of a Rotarian who truly lived up to the 4-way test of Rotary. We had a former member in our club some years ago who passed on, named Ken Goyer, who was considered by our club to be just an exemplary humanitarian. And sometime after Ken passed, our club decided to come up with an annual award, the Ken Goyer Award, to recognize a person who has been embodied that humanitarian spirit. And a few months ago, our board decided that this year that was going to be going to Rod. And we had hoped most of our awards we give out in June at the end of the Rotary year, and we had hoped to give it to Rod then, but as it happens, and as we, in conversations with Betty, and learned that Rod's days were not likely to make it to that point. And so we ordered an award to come sooner, in the hopes to get it to Rod before he passed. And several Mondays ago, when he was in his last days, the award arrived. I was in contact with Betty on the phone, is it here yet? And John Fanner, who is here today, and I went over to give him his award. And many of his family were gathered, and it's kind of a nice, funny story. Some of you in the Rotary Gallery there have heard this already. But first off, they spelled the award Rod Holst instead of Rod Holst. And I hear from his son that that's not a totally uncommon mistake. So we told Rod that because he's so special, he's going to get 2 Ken Goyer Awards. And so, in fact, we were able to get him his first award, and then today we'll present Betty with his second award. I'll just add that while we were there, our Rotary Club, we have a main club and we have a couple satellite clubs that are started. And Rod was holding the award in his hand and looked up at me and John and the family, and he was just whispering at the time. But he pointed like this and he said, "I'm going to start a satellite club." So that's just who Rod was. So Rod, thank you for all you've given, whether through Rotary or otherwise. I know that you've left the world in a much better place than you found it, and I know you've left us all better people for having known you. Thank you.
So I played this perfectly at home, and I hope I don't mess it up here, but I'll give it a shot. So, anyway, I'll remember you. Oh, brother, let's try it over.
That was beautiful, Betty. As a fellow horn player, I have great admiration for you. Such a beautiful tone. At this time, it's time for sharing of memories, so I'd like to invite Sam to come forward. And after Sam shares with us, we'll have a time for family and friends to share, and we have a wireless mic we can pass around. So you might be thinking of anything you would like to share in this space. And then Betty will close us out with some sharing of her own. Sam, thank you.
Thank you all, and it's great to be here, and I feel so honored and privileged that Betty and family asked me to at least lead off with some thoughts and remembrances. We've spent exactly 21 days, I guess, mourning and grieving Rod, and that's understandable, and we each do that in our own way, and that needs to continue. But I'm going to suggest that we spend the rest of this day celebrating, full of joy, full of laughter of Rod and what he meant to us in such a positive and uplifting way. My connection to Rod, and I think maybe only Justin can be the other one, I've known Rod my entire life. I've never had one moment in my life that I didn't know Rod Holst. He's my first cousin. I was born about a year after Rod. I have lots of first cousins. They're all important. Rod is an extremely special first cousin. We have had lots of adventures and ups and downs together. One of the things that, of many that make Rod so special, I think, was what we just heard here in terms of being honored by the Rotary. He was someone that was so generous, sometimes maybe to a fault, always thinking about how he could do to make the world a little better place, whether it's through Rotary or food bank or Meals on Wheels or reading programs for the young or whatever. I'm reminded of one of my heroes who is Muhammad Ali, not because of his prowess in the boxing ring, but because of the kind of person he was outside of the boxing ring. And one of his famous quotes is, "Service to others is the rent we pay for our time here on earth." And I don't think there's a better poster child for that philosophy than Rod Holst. He just epitomized that. In addition to being so kind and smart and full of integrity, honor, as was already mentioned by here at the podium by others. Some of my thoughts about Rod, given that I've known him my entire life, is that Rod did not have an easy childhood. At age 9, his father was no longer in the picture. His mother, my Aunt Glee, was the foundation for him and his brother Perry. And I can personally attest, it was a very challenging childhood. I don't know if Rod and Perry ever went without food. They may have, but they were on the very brink of that. And thanks to Glee and the foundation and the strength that she had, she made sure that things could stay together as best that she could make it under these challenging circumstances. And Rod is the better for it. And many of those qualities come from his mother, who was a single mother at a time that was not easy to be a single mother. Rod was born in Denver, but he would come up to South Dakota, which is where I grew up and spent my childhood years. And so we started hanging out together, at age 10 or whatever. And we always were full of ideas and mischief, one of which was, I'll share a couple of stories that come to mind. The cattle ranch where I grew up and spent my early years was, it wasn't at the end of the earth, but you could see the end of the earth from there. And Rod would come, and we decided that we wanted to be pioneers like Davy Crockett or whoever, and wanted to go out into the prairie and spend a night with bedrolls and so on. And we were really psyched about it. My parents thought it was a bad idea, and parents are always right. So it turned out they were right. We went out under probably a couple miles from the ranch house, and there's no lights around. One reason is there aren't any people living out there. The other reason is it was before electricity, so there was no lights in the evening, and the sky was dark but beautiful. We put our bedrolls out underneath the cottonwood tree and thought everything was going well, and it was, until I made the mistake of asking Rod what was the most recent movie he had seen. And the reason that I did that is I never got to see a movie out on the ranch, but he was very erudite. He was from the big city of Denver. So it turns out he had just seen The Creature from the Black Lagoon. And by the laughter, it sounds like most people know about The Creature from the Black Lagoon movie. So I told him to tell me about it, and he did. One of the classic horror films of all time, of course, and it got me scared, like terrified. And Rod became terrified, and we decided that there was really no reason there couldn't be a prairie equivalent to The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Right? Makes all the sense in the world. And every time the trees would shake a little bit or something, we wondered if maybe, and we just talked ourselves into an absolute frenzy, scared to death. Finally, we decided, probably about midnight, that we weren't going to stay out there any longer and get attacked by the creature from the Prairie Lagoon or whatever, however you might want to think about it. And I said, our one-room school is over here about 2 miles away. So let's go over there and at least find sanctuary in the school. And we got over there, the school was locked, couldn't get in. And so I'm like, oh, now what are we going to do? And so we decided to go back to the ranch house. Probably arrived at maybe 2 in the morning. We woke up my parents. I think my brother was there. And we terrified them in a sense. I think they must have thought that we had eaten some peyote or something because we were saying, hey, listen, there could be a creature from the Black or whatever lagoon out here, and we all need to be really, really careful, and not just tonight, but and we just babbled on, just completely incoherently. My parents were just like, what in the hell is going on? So they finally talked us off of that cliff, and we did go to sleep. But that was one of my adventures with Rod. Another one, this would fast forward maybe 5 or 6 years, I suppose. And we were now, early adolescents, or no, I guess, 18, 19 or something. And out there in that same neighborhood, they had what we called country dances. And there wasn't any town. It was just a community building where they'd do other things other than have dances occasionally. But that was a big social event. So Rod and I went to the country dance, and of course we had to have something to drink. The drink of choice at that point in time was grain alcohol, 190 proof, Everclear. It's illegal in some states. And you take a gallon jug and you pour a pint of Everclear in it, and then your favorite fruit juice, shake well and serve. Serving, of course, was just like this, and then passing it on to the next person. Well, by the way, the technical or scientific name for that drink was panther piss. And so we had, Rod had way too much of that, and in short order, he needed to go to sleep, which is euphemism for passing out, right? And Rod, was a big guy, so we got him in the back seat of my car, and we went on for another 2 or 3 hours in enjoying the dance and the company and so on. And it was time to go home, and we went out, and Rod was no longer in the back seat of my car. It's like, well, where could Rod have gone? And eventually we started looking, and the other cars were leaving, and eventually it was just my car and a couple of my friends, and out there looking for Rod. It turns out there was a small area, maybe about twice the size of that table over there, that for whatever reasons was tall grass, prairie, and some cattails and stuff sticking out, and somebody looked in there, and there Rod was in a fetal position. I got to thinking of maybe he thought he was baby Moses with those reeds or whatever, but he was a lot bigger than baby Moses, and we finally got Rod out of there, which was not an easy task, and as big as he was, got him in the car, and we went home. The next day, it was Sunday, right? And there was always baseball games, country baseball games, one local team against the other. And Rod, as you know, was extremely athletic, All-American basketball player and so on. And he was our star, and we were a good team just because of him. Well, our team was up to bat first, and with 3 wild pitches, Rod whiffed them all. And that's not like Rod. And that was just the beginning. Then he went over to the bench, and then in the latter part of that inning, right, we're up to play defense, and Rod, with his long arms and so on, was our first baseman. And I said, Rod, I hope you have a good, normal day on first base. And he said, where's first base? So we benched Rod. I think that was probably the only time in his storied athletic career he was ever benched. But we did, and we were soundly defeated thanks to Rod and Panther Piss. So those are some of my thoughts and stories of Rod and the great times that we had. And then our lives continued we continued to stay close over the years. And, he had some challenges in his personal life, and I did mine, and so on. So we commiserated a lot over that. But then his world turned around when Betty came into it. And I want to thank you, Betty, for bringing such happiness and joy to Rod. He needed that. He deserved that. And you came through. You came through in big, big time. Okay? Thank you. I'm going to close here by a couple of things. Rod gave us all something of a gift. And I would like to suggest that each one of us think of just one thing that Rod gave you, that you can pay forward every day for the rest of your life. Just one thing. He probably gave each of us more than one. But make that little commitment. One of the things that my wife Trish and I are already doing. By the way, the reason Trish is not here is we have a kitty at home that's 16 years old and frail, named Dewey Lopez Obama. And we don't like to leave him at home. And so Trish was feeling guilty and so on. And I said, listen, if anyone would understand, it would be Rod, because he loved kitties. And that was one of the things that Trish always said about him. She said, any man that can love and express that love to a kitty is a man worth keeping. And so Betty knows that. But let me see, where was I on that? Talking about paying it forward. One of the things that Betty in texting of the last month or so has shared with me is one of the, I don't know what the word is, rituals, routines, or whatever, for Rod and Betty, was every morning saying, it's another day in paradise as long as the two of us are together. Trish and I have now adopted that, and we say that every morning. So thanks to you and Rod. The final gift that Rod gave me was 4 days before he died. I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to say goodbye. And thanks to Justin and Betty and probably some others, a Facebook time was arranged. And as comfortable and close as I was to Rod, I was still a little nervous about this. I mean, this is a wonderful man that I love, and he's about to die, and so what do I say? Well, it was just a beautiful 30 to 45 minutes of FaceTime with Rod. And there he was, and we reminisced. I think we probably talked about those two stories I just shared with you and a bunch of other stuff that we reminisced. And, he was just so comfortable with his station in life at that point. I used to be in the rodeo as a bull rider, and so he said, when I'm up in heaven, Sam, he said, I'm going to see if we can arrange a rodeo for you. And one thing I wished I'd asked him, I would have said, Rod, what makes you so sure I qualify to be in heaven? I wish I would not have asked him, but I'm afraid of what the response might be. But anyway, it was just a beautiful, wonderful conversation, just so uplifting. And I, like probably most of us, kind of worry, even though intellectually I've accepted the notion that, I'm going to die like everybody else does too. But, at some level I had, some, but after that, I thought, what? If that's my role model, to talk to someone that is literally on their deathbed and able to be so full of life and joy and personality and attitude. So that was Rod's final gift to me, and I wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Much. Appreciate that, Sam. I think we'll all have some caution when we approach the punch bowl at the reception today. Is there anybody that would like to share as well? Yeah, if you could say your name.
I'm Roger Rich, one of Rod's best friends. And Rod and I bonded over sports and athletics and competition. We would go out every Monday afternoon, have lunch for an hour or two. Closer, okay. And talk about what had happened with the Ducks over the previous weekend and other sports. And we, got into other subjects, life and history. And Rod had a tough time. He said growing up was really, really difficult for him. But one of the things that we really both loved was basketball. I played City League into my 40s, and finally my knees were telling me that it was time to give it up. And since my team had won the championship that year, I decided that was time to get rid of it. But Rod took it on to a whole different level. Rod was, as Sam said, he was an AAU All-American, and there were 10 members from around the United States on that team. One of them, some of you may remember, is Larry Brown, who was a 2-time or 3-time All-American, but really was well known for being a great coach and led the Kansas Jayhawks to a national championship and UCLA Bruins to a runner-up. But Rod, he was an elite guy. I mean, he was up there with the big guys. And a couple months after that, he was chosen to join a national team that went down to South America and played some of the national teams down in South America, and he loved that trip. But, you all know him as this kind, loving, caring, gentle giant. However, put a basketball in his hand, and the switch flipped. I mean, he was competitive. And, I think Betty got some of that on their last doctor's appointment when the doctor told Rod and Betty that there was nothing more the medical profession could do for Rod, and he needed to go to hospice. Rod told Betty he wasn't going. He was not going to do hospice. And that came by, I'm sure what he was thinking in his mind when the doctor said it is, hell no, I'm not going in. I'm going to take this game into overtime. We'll see what this other opponent has. And that was the kind of guy he was. Just a really, really competitive guy. And I want to say something to Betty. Betty, you have all your family and all of these friends here, and they love you. And so you can lean on them. Whatever you're going to need here in the next days, weeks, months, lean on them. We're all here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
My name is Melanie, and about 35 years ago, I was living here in Eugene, and I joined a sports club for singles called Altair's. They had all kinds of different outings, and one of the things they had was mixed softball team. Softball. And I said, that's for me. I loved playing softball. So I signed up, and I was a catcher. I'm a little over 5 feet tall. The pitcher was a 10-foot guy named Rod. We didn't know each other then when we first started, but there was a game along in the season, that came about, and there was a guy that came up to bat and hit a fly ball. And Rod and I both ran to the ball. Nobody called it. You know, you're supposed to say, I got it, I got it. Well, we didn't do that. Rod ended up with the ball. I ended up in the hospital. And I remember looking up and seeing these very hunky ambulance guys. And my grandson, who was about 8, and was saying to his mom, does this mean we can't go get ice cream? The other face I saw was my brand new boyfriend here. And we had sort of a really special night cooked up that was not going to happen. I came out of the hospital with a neck brace, my arm in a sling, and on crutches. It was a while before we got to that night. But I then got to know Rod as a friend. The first thing he did was offer to pay all of my medical bills. I had insurance, fortunately. I didn't need that, but I thought, who does that? Who does something like that? And we became very good friends for all of the rest of that time. In the meantime, we shared working with seniors together, and we shared the crackpots, which is right here. Raise your hand. 6 of us, including Betty. Betty and Rod, the 2 of us, 2 of them. And we would meet once a month, and we would either go to lunch or dinner or to the coast or whatever, hiked up probably every mountain in Oregon. Don't you think? Every mountain. Yeah. So a few days before Rod died, we had our last crackpot meeting with Rod. And we had conversations. I talked with Rod. I said, you know, I thought I was going first. I'm not sure that this is really fair because you've only been sick a short time. I always have problems going on. And here I am older than you, and you're going first. So you got to get a baseball team going up there. And we had such a lovely time. He could hardly speak, he was whispering. But we heard every word that he said. And I said, you've got to get a team going now. And we'll be up there soon, and I'm the pitcher this time. I'm 10 feet tall. You get my grandson. And what's the end of my story? Oh, we did a toast to introduce him to God. And we said, we know it's early for him to come, and we don't know why you want him because his jokes are really bad. But please take care of him and give him a good eternity and a rest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Yes.
Yes, thank you. My name is Michael Gilley. I'm a cousin of Rod's. I'm here with my wife, Sally. And I want to focus on a couple of things you said, Sam, about how, hang on just a second. About how Rod was in your life, your whole life. It's a different situation for me and a little hard to explain, but Rod was not in my life this whole life because I was put up for adoption right out of the hospital, Swedish hospital in Seattle. My parents took me right home from the hospital, and it wasn't until 30 years later that I had health issues that I followed up and tried to find my natural family, and that's where I found Rod and Sam and others. And Sam, my first 30 years, I was in Seattle, in the city. You're describing your upbringing in the country, which sounds wonderful. I was in the city. I got to go to the movies, 2 movies for a quarter. It was easy. The Gill Man was a kind of a hokey little thing, wasn't it, after you look at it, but I can see where it would scare kids. My name is Michael Gilly. The star of the show, The Creature of the Black Lagoon, is called the Gill Man, so I was called the Gill Man. Now, I hope that doesn't worry you. But you remember, he has a very distinctive swimming style there through the South American waters, and I can do that if you want to come back to the motel and take a look at it. But anyway, there's a lot more to the story. It's interesting and much more than I can go into here. But basically, I hired an outfit, a nonprofit corporation, to search for my natural family, because I had health issues, and you need to know your family's health background, and adopted kids don't have that, so that was a disadvantage. And I got quite sick in my early 30s and felt I needed to take that step. And so one day, I was just my usual family. The next day, they had found Sam's family and Rob's family and everybody's family related to the adoption. And my natural father was a guy named Ernest Funk, who was a rabble-rousing Montana cowboy. And there's family all throughout that. And I got on the phone with my natural brother, Sam Funk, and he invited me back to meet everybody, and I went back and had a wonderful time. And met people that I hadn't seen, that had things been different, I would have grown up with and been out there with you guys on the farm. It would have been fun. I had a lovely life and continued to, and I, of course, wouldn't have met Sally and my family, so we need to keep things as they are. But I have 2 families, and Rod was just fabulous to me, Rod and Betty both. You know, the adoption experts will say, there's some risks here, Mike, and we talked about this long. You come into an adoption and try to get behind it and see what happens. There can be negative things. It can be a bad experience for people. It can dredge up things from a long time ago. And those were all risks, but we felt it was worth it, and we took it step by step and carefully, and it all worked out fine with me. And the reason is because of these fine people, Rod and his cousins. They were just lovely to me from the very beginning. There was nothing negative. They were friends and family. They started out as family because of their relationship, but they became friends. And Rod and Betty have been lovely to us, and Sally and I have gone and had them up to our place and come to our parties, and we've gone down to see them. Rod and I would get on the phone every so often and talk about family things and talk about the latest Ernest Funk story, of which there's an endless amount that come around. And then I'd ask him as I got older about retirement and how to do it, and Social Security and all the questions that he and I were dealing with, and he was wonderful. I took advantage of him. But it gets back to your point about take one thing from Rod and what he taught us. And that's the thing that I would take and have taken without actually thinking about it the way you described it, just about how wonderful they were to me and how they brought me in to the family, made me feel comfortable. It was really a wonderful experience and continues to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? We got one over here.
Hello, I'm Shirley Vinson, and God sent me Betty as a friend years ago. And with Betty, I met Rod. And Rod has helped me always to be a bigger person, because he was so tall that I always had to stand up very straight. I miss them both. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. I got one over here. You can pass that down for me.
Hi, my name is Willow Cordain, and I've been hearing all of these stories of people who've known him a good portion of his life. I got to know Rod only about 10 years ago. It was before I was part of Rotary. I was a director of admissions in a memory care community, and he brought clients to me. And as many of you probably know, his second career was, I think, where his heart lay. I'm not sure, his first career was in finance. He would bring me clients, and I could tell that he was incredibly gentle and kind to his clients and his families, and I instinctively gravitated towards him. And we had like a little special connection, and I would, whenever he'd bring somebody in, I'd give him a big hug, and I'd come right up to his waist. I got a nickname from him, and I felt very honored because I don't really get nicknames, and so I'd get a big hug from him, and he'd call me Willow Peach. And, you know, I was in the same business as he was, basically. But some years later, he started to do a retirement, and he sold his company. And I got a little tired out in my role, and I quit as well. And oddly enough, our lives have intertwined, and he's actually made a very strong impact on the course of my life. And so that company got sold, and I ended up working for that company for many years, doing exactly what Rod did. And what Rod did, if you don't know, is he would help families navigate how to choose a community for their loved one. So somebody who's in crisis and needs to move their mom into memory care. Who better to do that than Rod, right? And so when I worked for the company that he started this many years ago, 15, 20, I'm not exactly sure. And I would get calls, because I was now working for the company he started, and they would talk about how wonderful Rod is years later, and they would really be disappointed to be talking to me, actually, at first. So I'd have to convince them that I was trustworthy as well as with Rod. And then, of course, I was in his Rotary, and I got to see how much he gave back. So not only did he give back to his clients so much, he gave back through Rotary. And then I decided to go out and do on my own, to be my own company and do the same thing. And I was a little worried. I was like, oh, I don't want to take away from what he started. And so I went to Betty and Rod's house with a little plant, because I know they're gardeners. You probably know their beautiful garden space. And I was gently telling them what I was going to do. And of course, Rod and Betty were so generous and said, absolutely, do that. I'm supportive of you. And a couple days later, Rod brought me a sweet little gift. And I just tell those stories because he's so sweet. He would bring gifts to the people at the memory care too. And you know they're not going to remember him, but he cared about them after he placed them. So I appreciate where Rod is at in that he's very busy right now. You realize he's got a Rotary to start, he's got a baseball team to start, and I believe he's probably doing some dancing as well, and there's one other thing I think he's got to start. So I am doing my best to pay it forward with the compassion that I saw him do with his clients, and that's my paying it forward. So love to you, Rod. Cheers from Peach Willow.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carol, and first of all, Willow, that's who you are. Willow and I have been talking to each other thanks to Rod and Betty, and now I know who she is by face. Anyway, my husband Joseph and I are neighbors of Betty and Rod's. We have been since 2009. They were the first people in our neighborhood that we met. They did what all neighbors should do. They came over and greeted us and welcomed us to the neighborhood and have been amazing neighbors ever since. We love them dearly. As Willow was speaking, though, I remembered that there was a time where my husband, who's a singer, had a performance down at the Unitarian Church and a dance. And I love to dance. And my husband will dance, but he's not a dancer. He doesn't lead. And Rod offered to dance with me. And he was one of the best dancers that I have ever danced with. And I just remembered that as Willow was talking, so thank you. And thank you, Betty, for you and Rod for so many years. We will continue to be your neighbor.
Just a quick word. Rod mentored my son Colton, and I'm forever grateful.
Thanks, Gwyneth. Anybody else before Betty wraps us up? I don't want to miss anybody. We got one over here.
Hi, I'm Chris Russell, and judging by the color of my daughters, you'll guess that I'm their father. So I met Rod through Betty. It was a little more circuitous than that, actually. I met Rod because Betty was my daughter's smart reader when we were in one of those very difficult times in life. And as a young single father, I was very cautious, apprehensive of this woman and this man that my daughter had met that I'd never met, but eventually we met them. And while I was apprehensive, I always continued to believe in the goodness of people. And Rod and Betty have shown us that. They've invited us into their home. Rod has been an incredible role model, an incredible example of a man to my daughters. And Betty has been an incredible depiction of a wife, a woman, just a wonderful couple, wonderful people. I'm glad that there are other people here who have come here because of the impact that they have had through their volunteer work. I don't know how many people really ought to be here because of the impact that they have had, but I know that Rod, his head must be very heavy with all the jewels in his crowns for all of the kindness that he has shared. So I wish him all of the luck starting all of these clubs and bearing the weight of that enormous crown. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Deanna Rivera, and have you ever met anybody that when you first meet them, the presence of that person makes this impact for the rest of your life? And every time that you're around them, you feel so welcomed and so loved. Of course you do, because that's Rod. And Rod introduced me to one of my best friends in the world, his beautiful wife, Betty. And I just want to say that what I take away from the two of you is that you had a superpower between you. It's a superpower, like unbelievably beautiful superpower of loving and giving so much to so many people. Betty would run circles around Rod, but he was definitely her rock, and I just loved being a part of that and getting to witness, and I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being so wonderful and for carrying his beauty on. I know you will.
Thank you.
I remember when I first met Rod and Betty, I was nervous to meet them, as I usually am with most people, but both of them just showed kindness and nothing else to me, and that has helped me recently with meeting new people.
Thank you. Is anyone else feeling inspired? Anybody else? And Betty's going to close us out. Oh, we got one more here. Is there anybody in the choir? I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody up here. Okay.
I'm going to lose it, but I lived in Eugene 12 years. I moved elsewhere, but the last 3 years I was in Rotary. And Rod and I immediately hit it off. We like to laugh and have a good time. And we did a lot of Meals on Wheels together, and I'd offer to drive, and he's such a gentleman, and he'd say, no, I'll be glad to drive. And then I thought about it, and my car was way smaller than his car. And now I understand. But I remember one time, because we like to share and laugh, we were coming back from a delivery area, and we were stopping at a train track or something, and he was driving this old, I don't know if it's a Buick, but it was a big, long sedan, which I called tuna boats in those days, and I said, this is the ugliest car I have ever seen, and we just lost it together. And it's just little stuff like that. But he was such a gentleman, and I appreciated being around him a lot. So, thanks.
Thank you. And I encourage everyone to come to the reception following. There seems like a lot of stories to be shared. I think, Betty, are you ready to close us out on our sharing time? Is there anybody else? Last call. Okay. Okay.
So Rod came into our lives, 28 years ago? 29 years ago, so I had to write this out first, but I just had to say that this is so hard to believe that Rod is not physically with us. We want to share our hearts about the special person that said I do to our mom that many years ago. We can't begin to tell you what a difference Rod has made in our lives when he became our bonus dad. The constant and unconditional love he showed us is immeasurable and such a gift. When he came into our lives, we knew he was forever. We remember warning our mom, if you ever get rid of him, you better be prepared, because we wanted him forever. The love you two shared has been the best example of what the true meaning of love, being married to your best friend, is. I'm a true believer that timing is everything, and it definitely was when they met. We'll let you tell that whole story in just a minute, but if it was a few minutes either way, it probably wouldn't have happened. And Rod said, a few days before he left, in his weak whisper, I just wish we had 50 more years together. So, do you want to continue?
I will try to pick up where you left off, honey. I'm Sherry. This is my sister, Karen. Can I have your glasses, please?
Yeah. That's called the 50s Club. It was summer right here.
I'm a true believer that timing is everything, and it definitely was when they met. I'm trying to find my way. Okay. We can't be, this is our message to Rod. We can't begin to tell you how we wish that you could remain in our hearts for eternity. Thank you for loving us and our mom with your whole being. You were the best bonus dad 2 girls could ever ask for. We treasure our memories with you, and we were so thankful to have had you as long as we did. Today we celebrate the wonderful person we had and the joy you brought to us and so many along your journey. Thank you for blessing our lives. We are forever grateful, and we know we will be together again someday.
Yeah, good job.
Okie dokie. Thing is, I've never been accused of being a woman of few words. And you've already, everybody's been so patient since we got started late, and this is going on. But, you're just gonna have to bear with me. Okay, so, oh, there we go. Yeah, okay. Boy, that sounds really loud. But I do want to explain, first of all, about the photo up there. It was taken last summer when our grandson, Daniel, Sherry's older kid, all of our 4 grandkids are in their 20s, but I'm going to call them kids anyway. So Daniel married Margot, and finally, because they started dating when they were juniors in high school, and they're now 27. Anyway, but Beth Albertini, back there, hold up your hand, took that photo, which is just fabulous, we think. And anyway, so let's see, I just wanted to explain that. I have a whole bunch of notes because I'm afraid I would forget something important. So first, let's see. Okay, so first of all, thank you. What? Oh, thank you so much for coming, each and every one of you. I was so glad to be able to hug most of you out in the narthex. Those that I didn't get to hug, I hope you stick around a while, and I'll make up for it after the service. But, and I still can't believe this is happening. I just can't believe the rod isn't coming back to us. But he wanted to die. He wanted to die so badly. He said he would take his own life if he could. So it was just used up, poor guy. But he was in a coma for 5 days. And so he was at peace. That was the wonderful thing, was that he was at peace. He was pretty tortured before that, because you've heard that he was whispering because he had a terrible case of laryngitis, and he had had it for almost 2 weeks. And he was just sick and tired of having to whisper. And, his heart and lungs were so strong, but darn it, his blood just wasn't going to keep him alive. And so anyway, he got his wish, but I'm telling you, I loved on that man. I talked to him and cuddled into his neck, and I stroked his head and his arms and his chest. And Karen rubbed his feet with lotion, and we played music that he loved, and because we knew he could hear us. I don't know if all of you know that when someone is in a coma, they can hear, and so you better not say anything that you wouldn't, Yeah, right, you get it. Anyway, but we cried and cried and cried and cried. I thought I was all cried out till today, but anyway, he was such a blessing to, I think, everybody who knew him. Let's see, I want to thank Randy Bernstein, for the Rotary plaque. By the way, I do plan to join Rotary because, those wonderful people have become my family, as well as you wonderful people here at the Congregational Church, and in addition to my birth family, and then special people like Ryan here, and gals that came from Washington and Phoenix. And so anyway, we're just beyond blessed. But so I think I'm gonna skip over some things I was going to say and tell you about the last thing. I'm glad Melanie talked about crackpots, because we had so much fun oh my gosh, we did. And our family we're all really tight, which is just incredible. Part of our family lives here, and then Karen and Doug's family live less than 2 hours away, so we get to be together often, and we just laugh. Huh? Well, and Justin lives in Miami. I'm sorry, Justin. I didn't mean to leave you out. It's just that you're so rarely with us. But let me tell you what, he was with us for about a month before his dad passed. And I don't know how I could have done it without him because Rod weighed 100 pounds more than I do, and it was getting really hard to manage him when he couldn't walk anymore and needed a wheelchair, and Justin, and my girls, oh my gosh, everybody really worked as a team together, especially when we had to give Rod morphine every 4 hours around the clock, those 5 days that he was in a coma. So, but we tried to keep our senses of humor, and it was like being between heaven and hell, for God's sakes. It was, I don't know. Well, it wasn't horrible because I still had him with me for a few more days and hours. But when he passed, it was time. It was time for him to go. And so anyway, a really precious thing happened a few weeks ago when we finally tore ourselves away from Eugene and went up to Karen and Doug's, and we went to a winery and had some flights of wine and some way too expensive appetizers. just money. But anyway, then all of a sudden, there was this package in front of me. Well, Sherry's birthday was the next day. And I thought, what's this? I have a package, and go ahead, Mom, look at it. Well, I pulled out this card, and it looks like a book. I know you can't tell from here, but it does look like a book, and the binding, the part of the binding says a fairy tale romance. And it just happened to be Rod's and my 28th anniversary. And he had passed away the week before. And so the card says, happy anniversary. Our love is like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, I became yours, and you became mine. And then on the inside, it says, Betty, I love you this much. I always have, I always will. I am sorry I'm not quick to be there to celebrate our 28th, but I'll be thinking of you all the time I'm gone. I love you forever. It's signed, Love, Rod. In his handwriting, he signed it before he died. So, anyway, bless Justin for going out and finding the card. And Sherry is the one that wrote in it. And then there was a gift of my favorite perfume that's way too expensive, but I love it anyway. Can you tell I'm a little mercenary? But no, I think I'm really generous in some ways and pretty penny pinching in other ways. But anyway, anyway, I just want to thank all of you for being here. It's just wonderful to have so many friends, all in the same place at the same time. Yeah, so thank you. Bless you. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Betty. And his love remains. And now may the peace which passes all understanding hold our hearts and minds in the knowledge of our belovedness from all eternity. May the blessing of the Spirit of life be among you and remain with you always. Go in peace.
I'm going to invite you to stand up and sing this with me for Rod, since he was such a big fan of John Denver. We know that he's now home, and we'll just sing to him. Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze. Country roads take me home to a place where I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads, all my memories gather round her. Miner's lady, stranger to blue waters, dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty taste of moonshine, teardrop in my eye. Country roads take me home to a place where I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads, I hear her voice in the morning now, she calls me. The radio reminds me of my home far away. And driving down the road I get a feeling that I should have been home yesterday. The country roads take me home to a place where I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads, country roads, country roads, take me home to the place where I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads, take me home. Down country roads, yeah, take me home. Down country roads.